Alright everyone, welcome back to our sixth video in this video series of creating Node.js apps from beginning to end. Previously we created our first Node.js server and we learned how to render some responses back to the user in the browser. In this video we're going to be taking a look at using the package Express with Node.js, and what Express will allow us to do is to create our apps much more quickly and much more user-friendly for us as developers. Express is going to be a layer on top of our existing Node.js app. So let's go ahead and get that started like we always do. So I'm going to call this folder Node Express, and then I'm going to open that up in my terminal. Once I have that open up in my terminal, I'm in that working directory. I'm going to run npm init with that yes flag, just like we always do. And then I'm going to create my index.js file, and then I'm going to open it all up in my text editor. Alright, now that it's opened up in my text editor, I'm going to go ahead and install a couple packages from npm. Namely, I'm going to install NodeMon and Express, which NodeMon is how we're going to create that dev start script that we did last time, and Express is the package we're going to be using this time to create our Node.js app. You'll see here when you run npm install, you can specify several packages separated by spaces, and npm will install them all for you at the same time, so you don't have to run multiple instances of npm install. So we're going to let that go ahead and run. And alright, now that that's installed for us, we go to our package.json. We will notice in our dependencies we have two packages, Express and NodeMon. So now we have NodeMon, we can go ahead and create that dev start script. Alright, now we have that. And then we are going to go over to our index.js, and we're going to create our basic Node.js server just like we created last time, just a bare bones server to get it up and running. So import that HTTP module, and then create our server. I'm going to save our server to a variable called server, so http.create server just like last time. And now instead of passing in a function and defining it somewhere else, I'm going to define this function with our request and response objects right here in line. So I'm using anonymous functions to create a function and pass it in right away. So we're just going to say res.statuscode is going to equal 200. Now last time you'll remember that we wrote to the head of the response. This time we're just going to set the status code property of the response to 200. So you'll see there's multiple ways to do things like this, and it's just personal preference of how you want to do it. And then we're going to say the content type here is going to be text/plain, and then we're going to say res.end, and we're just going to say welcome to our bare bones server. Alright, there we go. And now that I've created this server with a request handler and saved it to this variable, set it to that variable right there, I'm going to use that variable to say server.listen, and then I'm going to pass in, I can type, the port and the host for this server. Now, once this server is up and running, I can specify a function for it to go ahead and run after that. And so I'm just going to say console.log, and I want to log out server is running on HTTP localhost 3000. And that'll just let me know when the server's up and running and where it is. Just nice to see that little message sometimes. So let's go ahead and go back to our terminal and go ahead and run that. So npm run dev start. And there we go, we see our message, server is running on HTTP localhost 3000. So let's go ahead and look at that in the browser. Alright, welcome to our bare bones server. Alright, we've got our Node.js server up. So let's go ahead and start looking at Express. Well, in order to use Express, we need to import it just like we imported HTTP. So I'm going to say constant express equals, and then, oh, that's not what we want, require express. All right, now that we have express, we can go ahead and use it, and we say const app equals express. And this express constructor right here is going to create an app object which we then can configure down below. So I'm saving that to this app variable right here. So using this app, we can change out some of this code that we were using for our bare bones server to use this app object to create our server. So instead of server.listen, we're going to change that to app.listen, and we actually don't need to specify this host name anymore because it's going to default to our local host for us. So now we just specify the port we want to run on, and then perhaps a function that we want to run once it's up and running. So I can go ahead and save that. And if we go back here, we just restart our server, you'll see that we still get that message right there. So this server object we created right here with HTTP, we no longer need. All we need is the app object from Express. So you already see how much cleaner that code looks than having to manually set everything. We're letting Express take care of some of that stuff with its app object. So let's go ahead and talk about routing with Express. Our app isn't too exciting yet, so let's add some routing to our web app to give some functionality. Routing with Express is very easy. Instead of having to use those if statements to test what the method and the URL are, Express comes with functions that we can use with the app object to determine what the URL and the method are. So the format for that is just going to be app.method is going to be right here, and then URL is going to be right here, and then a function to run is going to go right here. So it's app.someMethod, and then what URL you're expecting, and then what you want to do as a result of this being received. So we're just going to say app.get, and then the blank URL, and then we'll just say request and result, because remember, we're still getting those objects passed into us, and then we're just going to say response.end. This is now an Express server. There we go. We're going to save that. It'll restart for us, and here we go. We get that message. This is now an Express server. So what happened was we sent a GET request on this blank URL, and our app received it with its app.get method on the blank URL and then executed this function right here. So that's all fine and dandy, but how can we do a little bit more with it? Well, let's go ahead and start making our app a little bit more modular than we did last time by creating our index and, say, a user's router object off in a different folder to make our app more modular, more contained, and more organized, so it's easier to maintain down the future. So in order to do that, we're going to go over here to our Node Express project. We're going to create a new folder called routes. In that routes folder, we're going to create two files called index router, or just call it indexroutes.js. And then we're going to create another file called usersroutes.js. Now that we have these two things, how do we use these two things in our index.js? How do we tell this app to start using those? Well, first we have to import them just like anything else. So I'm going to say const, and I'm going to say index router equals require dot slash, because it's in our root directory, so routes slash index routes. And notice we do not need that .js extension again. So, and we're going to do the same thing with users. So users router equals require, and then root directory routes slash users routes. There we go. Now we use the same type of function to handle this, to handle using these routers as we did to handle the get on a specific URL. But instead of get, we're going to change it to use, because we want to be able to accept any method that comes in and we on a certain URL and pass it to a certain router, but we want to accept any method, not just a get or post or whatever. So let's go ahead and remove this. And so we're going to say on the blank route, we want to pass everything that comes in on the blank route to index router. Okay, we're going to do the same thing for the users router. So anything that comes in on the user's URL, we want to pass to the user's router. Okay, so what do we want to do in this index and users router? Well, first we need Express to be able to do things. So let's bring it in with Express equals require Express, and then we create the router object. So the router, we're actually gonna lowercase that, equals express.router. So this right here is Express creating a router object for us to use. And at the very end of our code, we are going to export that out of here with module.exports equals router. So let's run through what's going to be happening here. And let's just say some handler here. Okay, so what's going to happen is a request is going to come in on the index router. It's going to be received by this first app.use, and it's going to see that blank URL, and then it's going to send that off to the index router. So it's going to say, okay, where's the index router? Okay, it's right here. Let me go there. Okay, what do you have for me here? Okay, I see you're exporting out of this module some sort of router object. All right, that's fine. What have you done to this router object that you want me to handle? And that's where we define our handlers. So let's go ahead and define a handler. So we're going to say router.get, because remember, instead of app, we don't have an app object up here. We have a router object. So router.get on that blank URL, and we just want to say, just create our method right here in line again and say res.send, and then an h1 tag perhaps. This is the index page. All right, now you'll notice I just said response.send, and then I added some HTML, but I never told the header of the response that this is going to be HTML like we did with Node.js. So let's see how the server, how Express handles that. Before we do that, we need to go to our users routes right here, and we notice there's nothing here. So since there's nothing here, it's going to give us an error if we try to use it in the index page. So let's just go ahead and comment out that line that's going to try to use it and then throw us an error. So we can go ahead now and go to our browser, make sure we're on that blank URL, and reload it, and we see this is the index page right there. Alright, so now let's go ahead and create that users routes. Alright, so first, again, we're going to import Express, and since we're just going to do a lot of the same stuff here, I'm just going to copy paste, make our life a little easier, and here we're just going to say res.send no users yet. Pretty sad. Alright, so you'll notice a difference here. You'll say, okay, well, how's it going to tell the difference? How is my app going to tell a difference? We're telling it to use the users router whenever we get a URL with /users, but when I go to users router, I just have this blank URL. And in index.js, I have this blank URL. How does it tell the difference? Well, that's because this blank URL is actually /users/, okay? And this index URL, this is /nothing/ because it's already a blank URL, so it's actually // right there, and 2 slashes just gets turned into 1 slash. So that's how it tells the difference. It says, okay, anything coming in on the users URL, we're going to send to the users router. So in the users router, anything here is automatically being prepended with /users already. So then we just specify that. So if we were to say router.get and then /myname, and then just go ahead here and create a little handler, and then res.send and say my name is, and then just put your name in here, and you'll be able to see that rendered on a different URL, but you'll notice it'll be the users / my name. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's go here, let's reload this, make sure, okay, yeah, we're still getting the index page. So let's go ahead and say /users. Okay, can't get the users, why not? We need to save that file right there. I didn't save it, that's my fault. Alright, so now if we reload it, we see no users yet. And then if we go to users / my name, we'll see my name is Johnny. But if we go to just a blank URL / my name, we'll see can I get my name. We'll see that there's no file here, no handler here that we've specified. So you'll see that it is being able to tell a difference between URLs on just a blank URL and URLs on the user's URL. Alright, so in this lesson we have learned how to do routing with Express, and in the next lesson we're going to look at using the Express generator tool, which will allow us to create our Express apps a lot quicker and give us a lot of functionality right off the bat, which we can then customize to make it our own. See you there.